In a kingdom filled with sunshine and song, there lived a princess named Bee. But Bee wasn't your typical princess who only cared for gowns and jewels. Her heart belonged to the creatures of the world, big and small. She spent her days chatting with squirrels in the ancient oak trees and singing to the bluebirds that nested in the castle eaves. The palace gardens were her true kingdom, a vibrant world where every flutter of a wing and every rustle in the bushes was a friend saying hello. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced around her feet, Bee heard a tiny, whimpering sound coming from behind a grand rose bush. Curious, she tiptoed closer, parting the thorny branches with her gentle hands. There, huddled on the cold ground, was a small, scruffy puppy. It was shivering, not just from the autumn chill, but from fear. Its big, brown eyes looked up at her, full of a sad story she couldn't yet read. Its fur was a muddle of brown and white, and one of its ears flopped down while the other stood up, as if it couldn't decide whether to be brave or shy. Without a second thought, Princess Bee scooped up the little creature. It was so light, a bundle of trembling fluff. She held it close, whispering soft words of comfort. "Don't you worry, little one," she murmured. "I'll take care of you." The puppy, feeling the warmth of her embrace, let out a soft sigh and licked her chin. In that moment, a bond was formed. Bee knew she had to help this lost soul. She named him Patch, for the little patch of white fur over his eye. A new adventure was about to begin, an adventure filled with secrets, challenges, and a whole lot of love. But there was a very big problem. A king-size problem, to be exact. Bee's father, the king, was a man of rules and order. He loved his daughter dearly, but he had one very strict rule: no pets allowed inside the palace. Not a cat, not a bird, and certainly not a scruffy, muddy puppy from the gardens. The king believed palaces were for people, not for animals who shed fur on the velvet cushions and left paw prints on the polished marble floors. He valued tidiness above all else. Bee knew this rule all too well. She had pleaded for a pet kitten on her 5th birthday and a pony on her 10th. But the answer was always a firm no, Beatrice. A palace is no place for an animal. So, as she held the trembling Patch in her arms, her heart was torn. How could she leave him out in the cold? But how could she defy her father, the king? Looking down at Patch's trusting eyes, Bee made a decision, a brave and slightly rebellious decision. She couldn't abandon him. She would just have to keep him a secret. Yes, that was it. Patch would be her little secret. She would hide him away, care for him, and no one, especially not the king, would ever have to know. With a determined look, she smuggled Patch inside the castle, hiding him under her long, flowing cloak. Her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs with every step she took. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a thunderclap, and every shadow seemed to be a royal guard about to uncover her secret. This was more than just breaking a rule. It was a mission. A mission to protect a tiny, helpless friend. And Princess Bee was ready for the challenge, no matter the risk. And so began the secret life of Princess Bee and Patch. Her spacious royal bedroom became a secret headquarters. A cozy dog bed was fashioned from her softest cashmere shawl and tucked away in the back of her enormous wardrobe. A royal serving dish, usually reserved for fancy desserts, became a food bowl, filled with bits of chicken and beef snuck from the royal kitchen. Water was served in a crystal goblet, only the best for her secret companion. Caring for a puppy, Bee soon discovered, was a full-time job. It was much more than just cuddles and secret snack. There was the feeding, which required masterful sneaking skills. Bee would pretend to be extra hungry at dinner, hiding morsels of food in her napkin to bring back 4 pats. Then there was the cleaning. Puppies, it turned out, were not naturally tidy. Bee spent hours on her hands and knees, scrubbing tiny paw prints off her bedroom rug with her own perfumed soap, hoping the scent of roses would cover up the scent of puppy. And, Of course, there was the constant fear of being discovered. The royal guards, with their shiny armor and thudding boots, patrolled the hallways day and night. Whenever their footsteps approached her door, Bee's heart would leap into her throat. She would quickly scoop up Patch, who by now loved to chew on her silken slippers, and dive into the wardrobe, holding her breath until the footsteps faded away. They had many close calls. One time, Patch let out a little yip. Just as a maid entered to turn down her bed, Bee had to fake a loud sneeze to cover the sound. It was exhausting, but every time she looked at Patch, wagging his tail with pure joy, she knew it was all worth it. Through this secret adventure, Bee was learning about more than just hiding a puppy. She was learning about responsibility, sacrifice, and the deep, unconditional love you can have for a friend. Weeks turned into a month, and the bond between Bee and Patch grew stronger every day. Patch was no longer the shivering, scared puppy from the garden. He was a confident, playful rascal who loved to chase sunbeams and tug on the hem of Bee's gowns. Bee, in turn, had become a master of stealth and a loving caregiver. Her secret was safe, or so she thought. The king decided to host a grand royal banquet. Dignitaries and nobles from neighboring kingdoms were invited. The grand hall was decorated with shimmering banners and enormous bouquets of flowers. A feast of epic proportions was laid out on long tables, and minstrels played lively tunes. The entire palace was buzzing with excitement and activity. For Princess Bee, however, the banquet was a source of great anxiety. It meant she would have to be away from her room, and from Patch, for the entire evening. She settled him into his cozy bed in the wardrobe, gave him his favorite squeaky toy stuffed dragon, and whispered, "Be a good boy, Patch, I'll be back as soon as I can." She closed the wardrobe door, her heart heavy with worry. Down in the grand hall, Bee tried her best to be a proper princess. She smiled at the dukes and curtsied to the visiting queens. But her mind was elsewhere. Was Patch okay? Was Elun Lil? Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the entrance to the hall. There was a series of surprised gasps, followed by a clatter of falling plates, and then a series of happy barks. Bee's blood ran cold. She turned just in time to see a small, scruffy, one-eared up, one-eared down puppy skidding across the polished marble floor, a stolen turkey leg held triumphantly in his mouth. It was Patch. He had managed to nudge open the wardrobe, sneak out of the room, and follow her scent all the way to the banquet. Chaos ensued. Ladies shrieked and lifted their long gowns. A dignified old duke tripped over Patch and landed in a heap, his powdered wig askew. Patch, thinking it was all a wonderful game, dodged through legs and under tables, his tail wagging furiously. He slid right up to the royal throne and dropped the greasy turkey leg at the king's feet, looking up at him with those big, innocent eyes as if presenting a great prize. The music screeched to a halt. A hush fell over the entire hall. Everyone stared, first at the puppy, then at the king, whose face was turning a shade of deep crimson. "Beatrice," he thundered, his voice echoing through the silent room. "What is the meaning of this?" All eyes turned to Princess Bee. Her secret was out. There was nowhere to hide. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the center of the hall, her heart pounding. She knelt down beside Patch, who immediately started licking her face, oblivious to the trouble he had caused. "He's mine," Father Bee said, her voice shaking but clear. She looked up at the king, her eyes pleading. "His name is Patch. I found him in the garden, cold and alone. I couldn't leave him. I've been taking care of him." The king was furious. His most important rule had been broken in the most public way imaginable. "You deliberately disobeyed me," he roared. This creature has ruined the royal banquet." But as the king looked down, he saw something that made him pause. He saw his daughter, who had always been so dutiful, now bravely defending this scruffy little dog. And he saw the puppy, who, despite the chaos, refused to leave Bee's side. Patch wasn't just a stray, he was loyal. He had followed her because he loved her. Bee began to explain everything: how she fed him, cleaned up after him, and kept him quiet. She told her father how much she had learned about responsibility and how much joy Patch had brought into her life. The guests listened, captivated by the story. Seeing the deep connection between his daughter and the puppy, the king's anger began to soften. He saw not a disobedient child, but a compassionate young woman. He saw not a messy pest, but a loyal and loving animal. His heart, which had been so set on rules, began to change. "Very well," the king said, his voice much quieter now. He sighed, a long, deep sigh that seemed to let all the anger out. "First thing tomorrow, we will send out the royal criers to see if anyone has lost a puppy. We must try to find his home." Bee's heart sank a little, but she nodded. It was the right thing to do. 4 days, the criers searched the kingdom, but no one came forward to claim the little dog with one floppy ear. It seemed Patch had no other home to go to. One evening, the king found Bee sitting in the garden, with Patch asleep in her lap. He sat down beside her. "It seems," he said with a small smile, "that this little fellow doesn't have a family to return to." Bee looked up at him, her eyes full of hope. "A princess should be compassionate," the king continued, reaching down to gently stroke Patch's head. "And you have shown great love and responsibility. Perhaps a palace can have room for a little more life. He can stay, Beatrice. He will be the first ever royal rescue." Bee's face broke into a radiant smile. She threw her arms around her father's neck. "Oh, thank you, father. Thank you." From that day on, Patch was no longer a secret. He was a celebrated member of the royal family, with his own velvet cushion next to the throne. He brought laughter and joy to the entire palace, and even the king was often seen sneaking him treats from the dinner table. And Princess Bee, with her loyal friend by her side, was happier than she had ever been, proving that sometimes the best rules are the ones that are broken for love. Thanks for watching our story today. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more magical adventures. See you next time.